Imagine this. The world we unpacked last episode. Trillions were printed, markets crashed, then rocketing to new highs. Inflation biting hard. Supply chains interrupted and in chaos. That wasn't just the headlines. It was your bank account getting hit hard. Household debt is now a staggering $18.59 trillion record. Credit cards alone, over $1.23 trillion. And only about 46% of Americans have enough saved to cover 3 months of expenses. The median emergency fund sits at just $500. The new world didn't just change economies, it changed how you live your life day to day. Today, we flip the script from big picture chaos to personal control. We're talking budgets that actually work, goals for you so that you can actually crush, tracking that keeps you honest, and a full financial plan that turns uncertainty into your advantage. Because thriving isn't just luck, it's systems. So let's build yours.
Life is full of choices, but how do all these choices connect? And how do we plan for what matters most? Because when your life goals align with the right financial strategy, you don't just dream, you climb.
Now let's talk about how to build and stick to a budget. Practical step-by-steps, okay? So let's start with step number 1, building a budget. Not some restrictive diet for your money that limits you in what you can do and becomes trendy and you get over time. No, let's talk about a tool that really puts you in charge, right? So step 1, what do we do there? Track everything for 1 to 2 months. There's apps that you can use out there like Mint. There's another one that's very popular called YNAB. YNAB stands for You Need a Budget. Pocket Guard. Or just use a simple spreadsheet that works for you if you don't want to, get into those apps. And see really where your money goes. Is it going to coffee, monthly subscriptions? Are you impulse buying? I can tell you as an advisor, a lot of my clients think they know their budgets, and when they actually take a look at their spending, once they're applying these principles, they realize there's an aha moment. Oh, I didn't realize I was spending so much money in this category. So let's start there, right? Really getting a hold of where we're spending money. Shocking stats is 69% of people that say they have a budget, but fail to execute because they don't track their spending honestly. So make sure that when you're doing this, you're keeping an honest budget. And then pick a method that fits for you. There's different budgeting strategies, and we're going to go over a couple of them. The first one being the 50-30-20 rule. Again, the 50-30-20 rule. What is that? Well, first of all, it's the easiest one to start with, right? Because it's very methodical in how you administer your expenses. 50% of your money goes to your needs. What kind of needs? Well, your housing, your food, your transportation, and then you just pay your minimum debts. 30% goes to your wants, the fun things, right? Like going out, dinner, theaters, entertainment, spending with your kids. So 30%. And 20% goes towards savings, paying off debt, investing, or a combination of those factors. Why is this a popular strategy? Well, because it's flexible. It's very beginner friendly, right? So you take a look at your finances and say, okay, only 50% can go towards, remember, housing, food, transportation, and minimum debt payments, and 30% to having fun, and 20% to saving. So there's a strict guideline on how to do that. The other strategy, or another strategy, is what's called serial-based budgeting. What that basically means is every single dollar is accounted for. Every single dollar that comes in has a category expenditure on what you're going to spend it on. So your inflows versus your outflows should give you a net zero every single month. This forces intention, right? It really causes you to say, okay, I'm accounting every single penny into categories, and you define what those categories are, by the way. How much is that going to housing, credit cards, all this, but everything is methodically measured. And some good systems to use for this one is the YNAB, because it's very detail oriented. Okay? Another strategy for budgeting is called the envelope system. It used to be you literally take your money, you cash it out every single month, and you put them in these envelopes where you say what it's for. Rent, housing, car payments, student loans, kids' education, whatever. But it's all in envelopes. And the idea is, let's say you put $500 or $1,000 towards groceries. That's all there is. So once you spend that money, There's nothing else. And that forces you to make sure you're not overspending, right? Now with new technologies and advances, they also have digital versions of this, just so you guys know. So you don't have to use like a physical cash envelope. You can use a digital envelope. But again, it's to cap spending and really prevents overspending on specifically things like entertainment and groceries, because that tends to be where people overspend. And again, there's some digital versions and apps that you can use to make it easier. Here's a pro tip. Automate everything, right? Use technology. Technology is key. Set up transfer, for example, to your savings automatically, like on a monthly basis or quarterly basis, whatever you want to do. So that means paying yourself first. So before because we have this tendency that we get our paychecks and then we want to pay our rent, our mortgage, our utilities, all the expenses. We want to go out. And at the end of the month, if there happens to be something saved, then we want to put money aside. And that never works, okay? What we need to do when we're budgeting is we need to pay ourselves first. So define how much you want to save every single month. And the first thing that should happen is a transfer from your checking to your savings on an automated basis. And then adjust it accordingly, right? Because life changes. Budgets aren't always set it and forget it. They evolve. Things are always changing. So let's talk about budgeting. Budgeting without goals is just tracking. In order for us to have a successful budget, we have to really create goals and give it direction. So we're going to use a concept called SMART. S-M-A-R-T. What does that do? It's specific, it's measurable, it's achievable, relevant, and time-bound. SMART it really gives you a guideline, okay, for you to really define these parameters and stay on top of your goals, right? You want specific goals. For example, my goal is to save X amount of money or pay X amount of debt down. Measure it. Okay, how efficiently am I at doing this? It has to be an achievable goal, right? I can't set a goal like, oh, my goal is to save $1 million next month. Come on, let's set something realistic. And then relevant. Is it something that's relevant to you? And we can define it by a time bound. For example, building a $10,000 emergency fund by December 2026. So one of your other options and alternatives is to work with a financial advisor, probably a fiduciary advisor that focuses on what's called comprehensive planning. What that does, it creates layers of protection and growth. It really creates steps, right? It defines really the entire process of understanding first what is your net worth, for example. How you do that is you define all your assets minus your liabilities, and that gives you a snapshot of where you stand. What do you want to do? Prioritize first emergency funds. An emergency fund is meant to cover essential expenses for 3 to 6 months. So take that number. Maybe you have a lot of expenses and building 6 months of reserves is just not feasible because of the way your money is being spent. Well, then start small. Take a baby step. Start with $1,000 saving reserve and then build from there. And then again, how do we tackle debt? Because that's the next thing we're going to do. So always first build a reserve, an emergency fund so you can cover expenses. Once we have that in order, then we want to create an environment where we're paying off debt. Which ones? Well, maybe tackle high interest debt first. Credit card debt kills faster than investing growth, right? So consider this. Like I get a lot of questions from clients. What should I do? Pay off debt or invest? Well, if you have a credit card where you're paying 20, 30% interest rate, your rate of return by paying that off is that 20, 30%. In order for you to make that same return on investment, think about that. The market average is at about 10.5% historically. It means it has to do more than double the historical performance of the market. But you're taking risk because the markets are volatile. So paying off debt is one of the greatest ways to have an instant return on the interest you're paying while taking zero market risk. Another thing we want to do is we want to build layers, right? So you want to max your 401k, for example. If your employer matches, that's free money. And then once you do that, consider doing a Roth IRA contributions. There's taxable benefits from that, right? So Roth IRAs go tax-free, or maybe it's appropriate for you. You do a traditional IRA where you take the deduction on your contributions. That's a conversation to have with your CPA, your advisor, on which one is best for you between a Roth or a traditional IRA. And then you want to diversify, right? So stocks, bonds, maybe some AI tech exposure. But it really depends on your risk tolerance, your investment objective, and your time horizon. So once we have all that part in order, we can't forget with comprehensive planning the importance of protection. What are we protecting? Well, your family, your assets, your estate, everything you build. And what tools do we use to do that? Insurance. Insurance is so important to this. Health insurance. How many people do you know, and do I know, that lose everything because they have a medical bill they can't finance? They get stuck with co-payments or deductibles, or they maybe didn't have any insurance and now they have a major operation, and now we're talking about in the tens of thousands of dollars in debt, right? Same thing with life insurance. Life insurance, you have a husband and wife who both work, and one of them unexpectedly passes away. Well, life insurance is meant to substitute a portion of the loss of income of that person. We'll never be able to replace a mom, a dad, a brother, a sister, a colleague, a business partner. But the idea is to make whole the entity that now has a financial loss. And then we want to look at disability insurance, right? Disability insurance, you get hurt at your job or away from the job and you can't work for a certain period of time. Disability insurance is meant to cover some of that gap in income. And then lastly, let's not forget about hedging against inflation, right? What is the best way to hedge against inflation? Buying assets over pure cash that appreciate over time. And then automate everything if possible, right? Winners automate savings and investings. Losers are reactive, right? They get surprised by things because they don't have a plan. So really important that we take advantage of the resources available to us. Emergency funds are very critical. Only 46% of Americans have enough to cover 3 months of living expenses. Many rely on credit cards for surprise expenses. And that's simply not smart, right? You get stuck where you're using credit cards and you have to pay high interest on that. So what you want to do is you want to start with a high yield savings account. Even though rates are coming down since the Federal Reserve started bringing down interest rates, you can still have some decent return, 3, 4, 5%, depending on where you bank. But the idea is this money is easily available. It has no risk. So you're not investing this money in the market and the market drops overnight and you lose it all or a big portion of it. It has to be money that is that you're able to tap into when you need it. Okay, what is the goal? Again, 3 to 6 months of essentials. If you're overwhelmed in the beginning, start with that $1,000 saving emergency fund. From that moment forward, build 1 month of expenditures. Debt management. So let's talk about debt management. Let's focus on high interest rate first. The avalanche method. It saves the most money. The snowball for motivation, for example, is you pay the smallest debt first, and then you start working your way up. So, for example, if you had 3 credit cards, one $10,000 debt, one $5,000 debt, one $1,000 debt, instead of continue making payments on all 3, and I don't mean minimum payments because you got to make minimum payments no matter what. I mean, if you're paying a little bit more towards the principal every single month, what you do is you make minimum payments on the 2 larger ones. And the difference, the money that you used to pay towards principal on the other credit cards, now you're using it to pay the smallest debt. And what that's going to do, it's going to be the quickest way to see one of your credit cards wiped out. So now that $1,000 debt is going to be the first one to be paid off. Once that's paid off, you take the money that you're paying on the first one and you pay off the second one. And once that's paid off, you go on the third one. So that's the quickest way, okay? And here's a reality check. Credit card debt is about $1.2 trillion in U.S. debt, and rates are 20% or higher. So avoid new debt, right? Use buffers instead of credit cards for emergencies. What is a buffer? Again, it's a reserve, right? It's money that's allocated. And if you can't afford it, don't buy it. I mean, that's the biggest thing, right? Like, we live in this consumer-based society where we think we have to have the latest and the flashiest thing, and that's not true, right? We have to know how to say no. Hey, yes, I can put this on my credit card, or yes, I can use my emergency funds, or I can use the money that's sitting in my checking or savings, but think about at what cost. The cost for your future, your planning, your kids' education, buying your first home. You don't want that, right? So create a budget, stick to that budget, be disciplined, and that's how we thrive in this environment. The new world has high debt, cooling but persistent inflation. There's a lot of AI opportunities and tools to win. Household debt records and weak savings for many is what's dragging us down and creating a system of dependency on debt. But let's learn how to maximize our money by creating a budget, by having clear plans and goals, and thriving or beginning to climb. This is how we begin to climb, right? It's like we're very intentional with the way we manage finances. But in order for me to be intentional, I need to understand, where do I sit now? What are my inflows? What is my income like? Where's it coming from? What is my gross pay versus my net income, right? And do I need to work with a CPA to maximize my take-home pay? And then what are my expenditures? Do I have a defined budget on how much I'm spending on housing, on transportation, on food, on discretionary spending, on travel, on the kids, on paying down debt? Define these things. And as you define these things, you'll see how it brings a picture to life, and we start taking the very first and essential step and journey of the climb. Until next time.
Life is full of choices, but how do all these choices connect? And how do we plan for what matters most? Because when your life goals align with the right financial strategy, you don't just dream, you climb.